To start things off, life isn't exactly a fair game. Honestly, it's a pretty garbage one. The Gainko isn't sugarcoating anything today. She's decided it's time to officially remove him from the party. Her reason is simple and brutal. He just can't keep up with the high-level battles they're heading into anymore. They're standing on a hill overlooking Tokyo, with the massive, swirling void of the Origin Gate hanging over the skyline. Ko is sitting at a massive level 254. She asks if he's even hearing a word she's saying. Then there's Kajura Keiichiro. He's stuck at level 75, a trap master in a world that's outpaced him. All he can do is give a quiet yeah. He thinks back to when they first arrived in the city as a group of 4, climbing the ranks together with big dreams. Back then, he thought Tokyo would be crawling with monsters, but it just became another city where people and money gather. Ko goes quiet for a second, her expression staying sharp and unreadable. She clarifies that this was her personal decision. She hasn't even told the other 2 members of the party yet. Keiichiro knows the rules. The leader has the right to expel anyone, even if it usually trashes the party's reputation. He actually apologizes, feeling like he should have been the one to bring it up first. Ko offers to transfer a quarter of their common assets to his account, knowing he's always been bad at knowing when to quit. But he turns it down. He tells her to keep it and use it to gear up his replacement since he's already caused them enough trouble. They share one final, awkward goodbye. Ko keeps it brief, while Keiichiro tries to act like the whole ride was fun. And just like that, she walks away, leaving him alone on the overlook. He isn't surprised, though. Deep down, he's known this day was coming for a long time. He remembers those last few dungeon runs. As a trapper with paper-thin defense, one single hit would have been a death sentence. People have been pointing out the gap in talent since the day he was born. It only got worse once they entered the dungeons. He wasn't delusional about his skills. He just wanted to stay by their side for a little bit longer. The word is officially out. Kajura Keiichiro has been expelled from Holy Sword. The rumors start almost instantly. People at the guild are already gossiping about why it took the party so long to finally sack him. Walking through the city, he can hear the snickering. To most people, having a trap master in a top-tier party was always a joke. He doesn't need them to tell him, though. He knows better than anyone that he was just dragging those geniuses down. He accidentally bumps into a passerby, but the person is such a strong adventurer they don't even feel the impact. Looking up, he reflects on the 40 years since those massive holes first ripped open in the sky. Everything changed when the gates appeared, and certain people started awakening to incredible abilities. On the train, the news is all over Holy Sword, calling them the celebrated party that holds the future of humanity. They've conquered 300 dungeons, making them the most successful group in the entire country. Now, expectations are sky-high for them to finally clear the legendary Origin Gate. Keiichiro looks out the window and notices something strange happening in the clouds. Without warning, a massive, multi-eyed arm thrusts out from the rift, reaching toward the city. He's paralyzed with shock, especially when he realizes no one else on the train seems to see the nightmare in the sky. The arm strikes down with a beam of pure destructive force, right into the middle of Tokyo. The impact is absolute chaos. Buildings and structures are instantly pulverized into dust and shards. In a matter of seconds, a whole section of the city is reduced to a graveyard of twisted metal and concrete. Keiichiro is buried deep under the wreckage, bleeding out and barely able to draw breath. He gasps for air, wondering what just happened. Looking up, the monster arm has already vanished back into the gate. Even as his life fades, his first thought is to tell the girls before anyone else gets hurt by that thing. That's when a mysterious woman with silver hair and glowing eyes appears, floating over him and mocking his unsightly state. He manages to ask who she is. She just smiles, suggesting she might be a god or maybe a demon. Her eyes have a strange, flowery pattern as she stares him down. She knows he doesn't want it to end here, doesn't she? The woman's shadow stretches across the wreckage, her long, silver hair flowing like it's underwater as she watches him. She asks if he's ready to begin, while a dark energy starts pulling Keiichiro up from the debris. Her hand brushes his face, and for a second, everything feels eerily calm amidst the destruction. Suddenly, she leans in and kisses him, sending a shock through his body that drowns out the pain. She lets out a soft laugh as he collapses back onto the ground, the divine light fading away. She tells him she's granted him power, but she doesn't expect anything in return, he should just live however he wants. Before he can even process what happened, his wounds are completely gone. Keiichiro scrambles to his feet, checking his body in disbelief. A desperate shout for help from under a nearby slab of concrete snaps him back to reality. He looks up just in time to see a massive section of a building starting to slide right toward the trapped kid. He rushes over, but he knows he can't lift that much weight. He pulls up his status screen, searching for anything that can help. His usual fire and slash traps won't do anything here. He needs something else, or that kid is history. That's when he sees it, a new skill called arrow symbol sitting at the top of his list. He doesn't recognize the icon, but it's glowing like a unique skill. He remembers the woman's words. She really did give him something new. There's no time to study the details. He slams his hand down and activates the sigil right on the path of the falling debris. He dives to shield the boy as the massive concrete block screams down toward them. As soon as the slab hits the arrow sigil, its entire momentum is yanked in a new direction, sending it flying harmlessly to the side. The building chunk crashes into the ground far from them, leaving the two of them safe in the middle of the dust cloud. Later, Keiichiro looks back at the arrow glowing on the ground. A trap that manipulates movement. The potential is insane. An investigator thanks him for his help with the rescue, but seems skeptical when Keiichiro mentions the giant arm. The man insists that if something really came out of the origin gate, the whole city would be in total chaos, not just one block. He tells Keiichiro to leave the high-level stuff to the pros who are still part of parties like Holy Sword. Hearing that name again stings. Keiichiro realizes it doesn't matter if they believe him. Even if they did, what could they even do against something that massive? He decides to head to a forest outside of Tokyo to test his new limits. If he wants to stand beside Ko again, he needs to change his approach. It isn't long before a rank D melon boar shows up, looking for a fight. It's the perfect test subject. The beast charges, and Keiichiro immediately sets his first trap. He's done this 1,000 times, but this time feels different. The boar manages to jump over his initial slash trap. Normally, that would be the end of it, since trappers can't exactly fight back on their own. He watches the monster circle him. Usually, a trapper's only way to get XP is by baiting monsters into their preset zones. Most people think his class is weak because of that passive nature. But if he stays calm, he can predict exactly where this thing is going to move. He activates arrow symbol, right as the boar lunges again, yanking the beast's momentum toward his hidden blades. The force vector sends the boar crashing straight into his trap, ending the fight in a split second. This is a game changer. Kajura Keiichiro stares at his hands, thinking about how his new arrow symbol skill can finally fix the biggest weakness of being a trap master. He knows he's still a bit fragile at close range, but the ability to force monsters into his traps changes everything. Standing alone in the woods, he touches the spot where he was kissed by the divine woman, fueled by a desperate need to grow stronger. He pushes himself through training, moving with a speed he never had before. Deep in a nearby cave, Reize Agino shouts at the civilians behind her to keep quiet while she holds the line. A swarm of imps crawls across the ceiling and walls, completely surrounding the lone paladin. Agino takes a heavy hit on her shield, struggling to protect the terrified workers who are begging her to run. She's sweating under the pressure, realizing there are just too many monsters for her to handle alone. Back in the forest, a bright light envelopes Keiichiro as he successfully takes down a monster and levels up. It's the first time in a long while he's managed to progress without relying on a party, and it feels different. His ears catch a faint metallic clanging coming from the direction of a nearby cavern. He remembers hearing about more frequent monster invasions since the gates started appearing in this world. He looks toward the dark opening of the cave, his instincts telling him something is wrong. The sound of combat is unmistakable. Someone is in there fighting for their life right now. His first thought is to call the association for help, but he knows the people inside might not have that kind of time. He hesitates, thinking about the risk of fighting high-level monsters without any armor, but the sounds of clashing shields pull at him. He makes up his mind and sprints full tilt toward the cave entrance. Running away won't get him back what he lost, so he decides to dive head first into the danger. The second he steps in the dark, Keiichiro sets his first trap, ready to test his limits. Inside, Agino is barely hanging on as she blocks a flurry of attacks from the persistent imps. One of the creatures lunges from the shadows, its eyes fixed on the exhausted paladin. Agino is pushed back with a heavy thud, her shield arm shaking as the civilians scream for her. The imps leap into the air, sensing her defense is about to buckle. She's completely spent, her breathing ragged as she prepares for the killing blow. Suddenly, a blur of motion tears through the cavern, sending the imps flying in every direction. Agino looks up to see a young man standing between her and the monsters, his daggers drawn. She's shocked by how fast he moved and notices his gear looks top tier for a solo adventurer. Keiichiro keeps it professional, explaining he's just leveling nearby and doesn't want anything but the experience points. He glances back at the civilians, acknowledging that the paladin has been doing a great job protecting them so far. They trade names quickly, Reize Agino and Kajura Keiichiro, before Agino asks what his role is. Her jaw drops when he calmly tells her he's a trap master. Without waiting for a reaction, Keiichiro charges ahead, telling her to focus entirely on protecting the people. He engages the imps directly, but realizes his daggers alone won't be enough to clear the room. Luring them one by one is the safe play, but he needs a way to take out the whole group at once. He decides to gamble on a new technique, feeling a strange surge of confidence in his new power. He sets a slash trap and prepares to combine it with his unique skill. He calls out Trap Fusion, a move that defies everything Agino knows about his class. A massive vortex of black blades erupts, shredding every imp in the vicinity in a single blast. As the dust settles and the imps lie dead, Agino can only stare in absolute awe. She asks if he's actually a wizard in disguise, but Keiichiro just repeats that he's a trap master. He checks on the civilians, while Agino struggles to believe that a trapper could have that kind of offensive power. Their brief moment of relief is shattered by a thunderous stomp. Something much bigger just arrived. A shadow falls over the group as a massive figure emerges from the back of the cavern. The ground shakes with every step of the mighty ogre, a high-level boss that has no business being this close to the entrance. Keiichiro eyes the beast, calculating his chances while admitting to himself that this thing is way out of his league. He yells at Agino to take the civilians and run as far away as possible, leaving the beast to him. Agino is hesitant, but Keiichiro stands his ground, beckoning the ogre to come at him. The ogre lets out a deafening roar, and Keiichiro realizes this fight is going to be his ultimate test. He knows he can't rely on basic traps anymore, and decides to push his trap fusion to a whole new level. He activates Arrow Symbol X2, the sigils glowing with an intense light beneath his feet. With a burst of speed that leaves a trail of light behind him, Keiichiro launches himself at the monster. He tears through the air, his daggers leaving glowing slashes across the ogre's thick hide. His daggers aren't doing much damage, but his plan is to keep attacking from outside the monster's reach. The ogre swings its massive club, but Keiichiro uses his speed to dance around the strikes, slowly whittling it down. Seeing an opening, he tells Agino that reinforcements should be on the way and to guide the people out. Agino wants to stay and help, but her duty to the civilians forces her to keep moving toward the exit. The ogre's speed suddenly increases, its club coming down in a strike that's too fast for Keiichiro to dodge normally. Instead of retreating, he lets go of his daggers and drops to the ground, a calculated move that catches the monster off guard. The ogre thinks it has him, but Keiichiro is already touching a new sigil he placed on the cavern floor. He calls for a trap fusion of his arrow symbol and fire, creating a massive seal right under the ogre's feet. A pillar of intense flame erupts from the ground, swirling into a firestorm that completely consumes the giant monster. Watching the inferno, Agino realizes that Keiichiro has the speed of a rogue and the destructive power of a top-tier wizard. She stares at the young man, convinced that he is about to fundamentally change the way the world sees the adventurer class. Keiichiro's jaw dropped when he realized he was standing at a branch of Reize, the biggest name in adventure gear in all of Japan. He hadn't realized Akino was the president's daughter, let alone the one actually running this entire branch. The girl thanked him for his help the other day, but she clearly had more on her mind than just gratitude. She explained that she felt responsible for her high position and took the dangerous field duty herself to prove she wasn't just a product of nepotism. Akino quickly shifted the conversation to business, leaving the boy a bit confused. The branch chief got straight to the point and asked him if he would sign a sponsorship contract with her. Keiichiro was skeptical, pointing out that he wouldn't exactly be a good face for a marketing poster. His new boss didn't care about posters. She just wanted to see him become the strongest adventurer there is. The offer caught the boy completely off guard. He assumed she wanted a top-tier ranker for her investment, so he admitted he'd actually been expelled from his last party. When he told her he was fired for being too weak, she just called him blind for letting him go. He frowned and told her not to badmouth them, showing he still held some loyalty to his old team. The young man figured she was just trying to be nice, but it made him realize how much he still needed to grow. Akino didn't flinch, saying she didn't mind his past or the fact that he wasn't top tier yet. She had total confidence that he was going to become a powerhouse. Seeing her faith in him, Keiichiro resolved to get stronger in every sense of the word. He officially accepted the contract, and they sealed the deal right then and there. With the business finished, Akino casually asked which party he'd actually belonged to. He told her the name Holy Sword, and she was left absolutely speechless. Miles away, the leader of that very party, Hagane Ko, was sitting on the corpse of a massive monster. Ko sat there looking at the sky, wondering if the friend she'd kicked out was doing all right. Her teammates tried to reassure her, saying they couldn't keep letting him risk his life in high-ranked zones just for their own selfish desires. The leader looked away, refusing to seek forgiveness for essentially ending his life as an adventurer. Yukiko teased her, saying Keiichiro would probably just act normal if they ever ran into him again. Then the teammate dropped a bomb, suggesting that Ko should have just proposed to him instead of firing him. She joked that being honest about not being able to live without him would have worked out unexpectedly well. Yukiko kept poking fun, calling her the type of girl who expects a guy to just read her mind. Ko got flustered and embarrassed while her friend laughed at the missed romantic opportunity. Kokori pointed out that as time passed, all kinds of things would happen and they'd eventually be far apart. The friend then brought up a rumor about a massive new plan to conquer the Origin Gate. Ko confirmed it, explaining that the plan was recently shared with the leaders of the top parties. She explained there would be an election test in the fall to see who was powerful enough to join the raid. The move was sudden and apparently linked to a mysterious report about a recent train accident. Ko then made a surprise announcement. She planned to retire from adventuring entirely after they conquered the gate. She had a wild plan to take Keiichiro to a country where she could marry him without any legal issues. Her teammates were left completely speechless by the sudden turn into marriage territory. Meanwhile, Keiichiro was focused on a much more immediate and practical goal. He arrived at a private dungeon that Akino had arranged for his specialized training. A maid named Toga Natsum introduced herself as the one in charge of managing the dungeon. The maid clarified that she was only there for observation and wouldn't be lifting a finger to help him. Keiichiro was fine with that. He drew his sword as the inspector wished him luck. He jumped straight into training, testing the range and cooldown limits of his new vector sigils. He realized that if he mastered the arrow symbol, he could actually make himself strong enough to stand on even ground with a frontline fighter. The boy had never stepped into a boss room alone before, and he couldn't help but feel a bit of pressure as he opened the doors. Standing before him was a rank B goblin general, a massive beast with a spike club that could probably level a small building. Keiichiro didn't hesitate, immediately moving to see what this monster was capable of. The giant swung its club with such force that it felt like the entire room had become a weapon, making it impossible for him to get close. He gritted his teeth, knowing he had to find a way to get past that defense and shatter the monster's heavy armor in a single blow. He watched for an opening as the beast prepared another massive swing. The protagonist managed to dodge the initial impact, but he still had a long way to go to reach the boss. He decided to combine his skills, calling out arrow symbol plus slash for a high-speed offensive strike. The impact sent shock waves through the room as he tore through the monster's reach. "Trap set," he shouted, timing his next move perfectly as the goblin roared in frustration. He activated a quadruple stack of his vector skill, creating a force far beyond what a typical trapper should be able to produce. The massive creature couldn't withstand the concentrated power and was literally split apart by the force of the attack. As the monster's body dissolved into light, Keiichiro noticed a small glowing object fall to the floor. He picked up the loot, a fire element ring that looked surprisingly high quality for a boss drop. He figured that since he had the fire trap skill, he could probably use it, but he decided it would make a better gift for Reize. Leaving the dungeon, he was greeted by the maid, who seemed a bit surprised to see him finish so quickly. Suddenly, A hyperactive girl named Tsukigase Tsukasa came running up, cheering about him finally being out. He glanced back at the dungeon entrance, thinking about the rare drop he'd just secured. The fire element ring was definitely an attack enhancement type, something that would be worth a fortune on the market. He looked at the ring one last time before pocketing it, officially deciding to give it to Reze as a sign of his progress. He could feel his own strength increasing, realizing that while he wasn't part of a high-rank party anymore, he was still leveling up at a decent pace. The brown-haired girl was practically bouncing around him, clearly mesmerized by his appearance. She blurted out how cool his cloak looked, mentioning she'd never seen rare gear like that in shops before. Keiichiro was a bit overwhelmed by her energy, wondering why she was being so friendly to a total stranger. The girl introduced herself as Tsukigase Tsukasa, a 14-year-old adventurer who was already at rank B. He was stunned to see someone that young already reaching such a high rank, noting that you didn't see many prodigies like her in Tokyo. Tsukasa didn't waste any time and asked him to trade contact info, completely ignoring his confused expression. She explained that even though she was a rank B assassin, she didn't have anyone she could trust to explore dangerous dungeons with. The boy realized she was actually ranked higher than he was, which made her total lack of caution even more baffling. She complained that most of her classmates weren't adventurers, and the few who were refused to go into the dangerous areas she wanted to explore. Seeing her loneliness, he realized they were complete opposites. She was skilled but lacked allies, while he'd just been tossed aside by his. She gave him a big, hopeful smile, admitting that exploring dungeons all by herself was just too lonely. Keiichiro eventually gave in and traded IDs, and the girl immediately started calling him Kajura like they were already best friends. She was clearly thrilled to have met a trap master and couldn't wait to see what they could do together. The girl's excitement was infectious, though he still had no idea what he was getting himself into. She waved goodbye as she ran off, promising to message him later about their first joint exploration. He watched her go, thinking about how his life was suddenly getting a lot busier with people like her around. Back at the Reze headquarters, Akino asked him how his first run in the private dungeon went. He pulled out the fire ring and asked if she would take it as a thank you for the opportunity. Akino's face turned beet red as she stared at the ring in total shock. They both stood there in awkward silence as she completely misunderstood and thought he was proposing to her on the spot. Akino blushed deeply, asking what he thought it meant for a man to give a woman a ring. Keiichiro quickly apologized, explaining that he only saw it as a useful piece of equipment. The protagonist admitted that today's dungeon run felt like a special first step for him, and he wanted his sponsor to have it. He looked at her with a sincere expression, telling her that he simply wanted to share his success with her. Akino sighed softly to herself, realizing that in the end, her new partner hadn't changed much at all. The maid stepped in, teasingly asking if the young man was suggesting that her lady should wear the ring herself. The night air was filled with a sudden panic as Akino realized he had accidentally placed the ring on her left ring finger. Keiichiro stares at the contact info for the girl he met earlier, Tsukigase Tsukasa. Suddenly, his phone buzzes. It's Tsukasa, sounding a bit frantic because she's been trying to reach him all day. She wants him to join a temporary party tomorrow. She explains that an acquaintance is putting a team together and everyone's around his level. Keiichiro isn't so sure. Joining a party of randoms usually isn't a great idea. He looks at the silhouettes of the other members. It seems like a standard group setup. Tsukasa won't take no for an answer, insisting she wants him to come along since the leader seemed like a nice guy. Keiichiro finally caves, saying he'll join if the leader is okay with it. Tsukasa is thrilled and makes plans to meet up the next morning. When they meet, the leader, a massive guy with a boisterous laugh, instantly welcomes him aboard. Keiichiro is surprised it was that easy. He double-checks if it's really fine even though he's a trap master, but the leader says any friend of Tsukasa's is good by him. The guy just laughs, claiming that at their rank, specific jobs don't really matter. He says things might be different in Tokyo, but they're chill here. Tsukasa gives him a reassuring look. She thinks they're good people and that trust is the most important thing when you're in a dungeon. With the introductions out of the way, the party heads into the dungeon raid. As they walk, Keiichiro feels a sudden chill. He narrows his eyes, sensing something is off. He stops to look back, but the others just keep trekking forward. He watches the three men from behind. Something about their casual demeanor feels forced, and his gut tells him to stay alert. They push deeper into the forest and run into a pack of wolves, which the group makes short work of. Tsukasa is a blur, cutting through the monsters with ease. Keiichiro notes that everyone in the party seems surprisingly capable. He's particularly impressed by the girl. For her age, her body control and precision are already at a pro level. Keiichiro does his part too, casually taking out a monster with his unique skill. The mage behind him gives a small, impressed hum. After a while, they stop for a break. The old guys claim they're wiped, while Tsukasa is still jumping around, ready for more. They're pretty deep in now, and the boss room should be right around the corner. Keiichiro wonders if he was just being paranoid earlier. The leader looks back with a stern expression. A metallic clinking sound rings out. The man smirks, saying it's finally time. The mood shifts instantly. Before Keiichiro can even react, the trap is sprung. The leader lunges and grabs Tsukasa, pinning her. He mocks her, saying even a high-ranked assassin is just a scrawny kid once they're caught. Keiichiro watches, his eyes cold. He finally connects the dots. He identifies the sound. It's the clink of high-rank gear he's heard 1,000 times before. He calls them out for disguising their expensive equipment to look like trash. The act is over. The three of them are bandits who specialized in luring people in by pretending to be low-level. Keiichiro stays calm, noting that their movements are far beyond what a C rank should be capable of. The bandit swordsman eyes Keiichiro's cloak greedily, wondering how many people he had to kill to get such high-level gear. Tsukasa is in shock, unable to process that the people who were so kind to her could do something so monstrous. The leader just laughs. He tells her nobody would ever team up with a trap master unless they were planning to rob him. He admits he was actually relieved to hear Keiichiro had a trash job, since he was worried Tsukasa might have brought along another actual threat. Tsukasa screams for Keiichiro to run. She claims she can hold them off and tells him to go get help. The mage sneers at her, telling her to shut up. He mocks the idea of a trap master being able to pull off an escape against them. Tsukasa is overwhelmed with guilt, crying because she feels responsible for dragging him into this nightmare. She thought she finally found someone to ease her loneliness, but now she's terrified it's all going to end in tragedy. Keiichiro stands silently, his face a mask of calm. He softly apologizes to Tsukasa. The bandit swordsman moves in for the kill. Keiichiro stares him down, stating he has no intention of running. He says his path doesn't allow him to ignore people like them. The bandit leader is taken aback, confused by the boy's sudden confidence. Keiichiro clarifies his point. He's calling them ignorable trash. The leader snaps, his face twisting in a murderous rage. He screams for his men to kill the trash-tier job punk right now. Keiichiro doesn't waste a second, instantly setting his arrow sigil right in front of the charging bandit. A pillar of light erupts as the trap triggers, catching the swordsman off guard. The bandit is sent flying back, screaming in confusion as his own momentum is turned against him. The bandit mage tries to counter, but he's far too slow to keep up with the redirection. Keiichiro stands over him, watching him struggle. He notes that the mage waited to react until after he moved, but even then, he was just too slow. He mocks them, saying it doesn't matter how much rare gear they steal. They're still just low-rankers at heart. The bandit leader can only growl in frustration. The leader breaks out in a cold sweat, realizing that if he even touches that arrow sigil, he's done for. He stands his ground, but the fear in his eyes is obvious as Keiichiro prepares his next move. In a desperate move, the bandit tries to use a flashbang to cover his escape. Keiichiro just narrows his eyes, completely unfazed. Keiichiro strikes through the blinding light, catching the leader with a perfectly timed blow. The bandit collapses to the ground, gasping for air. Keiichiro mentions he's fought in sandstorms and even underwater. He's not leaving any openings for a bottom feeder like this guy. The leader grovels, still desperately claiming he'll kill Keiichiro and strip him of his gear. He's clearly forgotten who has the upper hand. Keiichiro looks down at him with pure disdain. He tells the guy that gear stolen from others isn't his own strength, and it certainly won't save him now. The bandit screams about how he only took what he wanted from the people who mocked him, claiming that's how he got strong. He truly believes the world belongs to the ones who survive at any cost. Keiichiro shuts him down immediately, saying that's not survival. It's just a weak heart giving in. The leader lunges one last time, but he's already lost. Keiichiro prepares the final strike. The arrow sigil glows brightly on the ground, sealing the fate of the 3 bandits. In an instant, it's all over. The bandits are left in the dust as Keiichiro stand victorious. Keiichiro reflects on the words he and Ko grew up hearing, that the most important thing in a dungeon is having someone you can trust at your back. It's a lesson these bandits clearly never learned. A bit later, Keiichiro joins Tsukasa at their camp. He tells her he already called for backup to come collect the trash. Luckily, no other monsters showed up while they were waiting. The backup arrives and hauls the trio away on stretchers. Keiichiro used his camo cloth to hide his identity, knowing that carrying all 3 of them out himself would have been a huge pain. Tsukasa is still feeling terrible, apologizing for dragging him into her mistake. Keiichiro just tells her not to worry about it. He's actually glad she invited him along. Since the group of 5 is now down to just the 2 of them, Keiichiro suggests calling it a day. But Tsukasa isn't ready to quit yet. She looks at him with pleading eyes, asking if they can keep going until they can't anymore. She doesn't want her first outing with him to end on such a sour note. Keiichiro sees that her spirit is still intact, which brings a small smile to his face. He asks her if she's really okay running the rest of the dungeon with him. She cheers up instantly, shouting, "Of course I will," and they head deeper into the woods together. As they walk, someone watches them from behind a tree. It's Reize Aquino, who's been keeping a close eye on her new investment. She admits she was ready to jump in if things got too dangerous, but it turns out her worries were completely unnecessary. She realizes it's time to head back and file her report. Meanwhile, Keiichiro and Tsukasa reach a snowy summit, slicing through another pack of wolves like it's nothing. Tsukasa is still amazed by just how powerful his skills are. She asks if he has some kind of unique skill, but Keiichiro just tells her he kept it hidden at first, just in case. He's starting to open up a bit more. Tsukasa jokingly asks if he's falling for her, since he's being so nice. Keiichiro just brushes it off, saying it was just a slip of the tongue. They're definitely bonding. They continue their climb, effortlessly taking out every monster that crosses their path. They're a pretty solid team. Finally, they reach the entrance to the boss room. Tsukasa is pumped, shouting that they finally made it. The scenery hasn't changed much, and they don't see a boss anywhere. Keiichiro tells her to keep her guard up, knowing monsters like to hide behind the doors. Suddenly, the air feels heavy. They both stop, sensing a presence nearby. Out of nowhere, something fast and sharp strikes at them. They barely have time to react. Keiichiro was on high alert the entire time, so there's no way he missed it. But even for him, the attack was incredibly fast. He notes that the enemy probably wasn't visible to the naked eye. Tsukasa confirms she didn't see a thing. It's a wolf-type monster, and it's clearly using some kind of stealth skill to stay hidden. This is going to be a tricky one. A transparent stealth wolf lets out a long howl from the cliffside above. It's calling for its pack. A group of wolves emerges from the shadows, surrounding them. Keiichiro realizes the stealth wolf is hiding while its underlings do all the hunting. The only way to end this is to find the stealth wolf and take it out before they get overwhelmed. It's a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek now. Keiichiro stays focused as the number of wolves keeps growing. He quickly sets an arrow sigil plus flame trap, realizing the pack is already up to 10. Tsukasa keeps up the pressure, but she's starting to realize the wolves are spawning infinitely. They need to find a source fast. Keiichiro analyzes the situation, noting that the boss is staying far away from its pack, making it impossible to find just by searching. Standing back to back, he calls out to his partner. He shouts to Tsukasa, asking if she can hold off the entire pack by herself for just 10 seconds. He's betting everything on this one opening. Without a hint of hesitation, Tsukasa shouts, "Got it," as she slices through another wolf. She trusts him completely. Keiichiro moves like a blur, setting an arrow sigil plus slash trap. He tells her to push herself even harder and go even faster. Tsukasa pushes herself to the absolute limit, her eyes wide with focus as she pushes her speed to its peak. The traps detonate in a massive shockwave, clearing out the majority of the pack in an instant. Keiichiro knows he can finally pinpoint the boss's location once it howls again. Tsukasa is ready and waiting, her senses heightened. She knows that as soon as that wolf makes a sound, she'll have it locked on. The stealth wolf lunges from the shadows, catching Tsukasa by surprise. She cries out in pain as the invisible force knocks her back. Keiichiro is right there to catch her, praising her for holding out so well. Tsukasa is frustrated that they lost track of it again, but he just smiles and tells her he has a plan. Tsukasa looks up at him, her eyes shining with admiration. She thinks to herself that fighting alongside him is the most fun she's ever had. To her, it feels just like love. She's completely captivated by Kajura Onii-chan, seeing him as the truly amazing person he is. To her, he's the real deal. With a blush on her face and newfound determination, she asks him point-blank if he'll officially team up with her. She doesn't want this partnership to end here. Keiichiro is caught off guard by the sudden request. He looks at her, considering the possibility of finally having a real partner again. The battle is far from over, but the bond between these two has already grown into something much stronger than just two hunters on a quest. Keiichiro's mind was made up from the start. He never planned on joining any party other than Holy Sword. But then Tsukige's Tsukasa drops the question, asking him to officially team up with her. He asks for some time to think, even though he appreciates the offer. They're back in the field, tracking a stealth wolf that keeps slipping away. He finally pinpoints its location and calls for Tsukasa's help. She's more than ready, cheering him on before the fight begins. She draws her daggers, keeping her eyes peeled for any movement. A branch snaps. The invisible predator just made its first mistake. The massive wolf lunges out of thin air, right at them. But this is exactly what he was waiting for. He activates arrow symbol ×4, creating a massive boost right under her feet. She takes off like a rocket, leaving a trail of dust in her wake. The speed is so intense, he can barely keep track of her. She dives straight through the beast with a blinding strike. It's over in an instant. They actually did it. She stands amidst the settling dust, looking back at their work. She's stunned that they managed to clear such a high-level gate. She turns back with a bright smile, thanking her Onii-chan for the assist. Later, they meet up at a building belonging to the Reize family. They're relaxing at the terrace cafe, glad to have made it back in one piece. Toga Natsum serves them tea, expressing how relieved she is to see him safe. Tsukasa is a bit flustered by the formal treatment. He notices she seems a bit tense and asks if she's nervous. He wonders if she actually gets along with everyone at the cafe. She brings it back to her offer, still waiting for a real answer. He apologizes for making her wait while he considers his options. He's honest with her. His ultimate goal is to reunite with his old party. He tells her he didn't plan on forming an official party with anyone else. Reize Akino chimes in, listing all the benefits of joining forces. She explains that working in a group is the best way to learn team-based skills. He worries that he'd just be taking advantage of her kindness since he'd leave eventually. But Tsukasa doesn't seem to care about that at all. She's willing to take whatever time she can get if it means teaming up with him. She insists that she's always learning from others anyway. Seeing her resolve, he finally gives in and agrees to team up. A little selfishness between friends doesn't hurt. She's ecstatic, promising to help him reach his dream. Then he turns to Akino and asks her to join them as well. She agrees, pointing out that every party needs a solid tank. Tsukasa is over the moon now that their little group is officially a thing. Akino offers to handle the paperwork while they think of a name. He looks down, trying to come up with something that fits. He settles on the name Vestige, a quiet nod to his past and the journey that brought him here. He knows that chasing the shadows of his former life might be embarrassing, but it's the only thing keeping him moving. Reize Akino officially welcomes them as members of their new party, ready to start fresh. But while she's looking through the paperwork, something on Tsukige's Tsukasa's ID catches her eye. She stares at the document in pure disbelief, double-checking the gender listed on the page. She shouts in shock when she realizes Tsukasa is actually a boy, while Keiichiro just chuckles at her reaction. Meanwhile, across the city, the news of Keiichiro forming a new party has already reached some interested ears. Yuko takes a call from the maid, Toga Natsum, who's been keeping a close eye on his progress. She tells her contact that she couldn't ignore a request regarding her childhood friend, even if it's off the books. Again, Ko looks down at the report, calling him an idiot while admitting that his reckless side is what she likes most about him. Back in the desolate gates, Yuko prepares to move, still skeptical that Keiichiro is strong enough for the challenges ahead. She stands alone against a swarm of masked avian monsters in a frozen wasteland. Known as the Hand of the Death God, she carved through the creatures with lethal, high-speed strikes. She knows he's trying to catch up, so she's determined to finish the job before he can reach them. She regroups with her teammates, casually dismissing the danger like it was nothing more than a stroll. She decides to keep her observations a secret, knowing that Hagenko would lose her edge if she knew he was so close. Later that night, the focus shifts to a grand hotel where a major event is about to take place. Tsukasa is fully leaning into his look for the gala, bragging about how cute he looks in a dress. Keiichiro, on the other hand, is struggling just to get his necktie straight. Akino joins them, looking elegant in her evening gown and asking if they're ready for the night. They step into the ballroom, marking the official start of Vestige's first real assignment. This isn't just a party. It's a raid where multiple groups must team up to conquer a high-difficulty dungeon. He's genuinely impressed by the sheer number of high-level adventurers gathered in one room. The raid organizer, Kiryu and Jessica, takes the stage to welcome everyone to the event. Tsukasa notes how young she looks, while he realizes she carries herself with a poise of high-ranking nobility. Akino explains that Jessica is essentially their employer, acting on behalf of her father to secure a dungeon clear. He realizes that a raid is a perfect cover for someone to bring along less experienced members and hide them in the crowd. He explains why the payout is so high. They're buying the help of as many capable people as they can get. It's a win-win situation where the organizers get their achievement and the adventurers get a big payday and experience. Tsukasa thinks the whole thing feels a little unfair, but he reminds her that he spent years being carried by the best. However, Kiryu and Jessica drops a bombshell, admitting they recruited way more people than they actually need. She announces that a selection test will be held tomorrow to narrow down the ranks. Tsukasa is horrified that they might be sent home before they even start, but he tells her this is standard practice. While Akino goes off to mingle, he decides the best use of his time is hitting the buffet as hard as possible. Looking at the crowd, he feels a wave of nostalgia for the days when he'd let Hagenko handle all the social pressure. He worries that his past expulsion might cause friction if someone recognizes him among the elites. Nearby, he spots a student who looks like she's about to have a total nervous breakdown. He's surprised to see another kid here, especially one who seems so out of her depth. She's so panicked that she trips and slams right into him, sending food flying everywhere. He tries to help her up and tells her to take a deep breath before she passes out. The girl, Yuusha, tearfully admits that she's a wizard who needs to join this raid, but she's terrible at dueling. He looks at her, seeing a familiar struggle in her eyes and realizing exactly what she's going through. Keiichiro reassures the young girl, explaining that he's in the same boat when it comes to struggling with duels. He tells her that the losers aren't always sent home, as long as they manage to show off their true potential to the organizers. He reminds her to just stay calm and focus on putting on a good show, while making sure she doesn't drop any more food. The girl looks up at him with a small, appreciative blush, finally feeling the weight of her panic start to lift. Despite his encouraging words, he knows that as a C-rank trapmaster, he's effectively forced into a corner where he has no choice but to win. Nearby, Akino and Jessica reunite, their close friendship evident as they greet each other warmly in the middle of the crowded ballroom. Jessica leans in with a playful grin, asking if Akino is nervous about the upcoming test now that everyone's eyes are on her. She confidently declares that once her father hands the company over to her, she and Akino will be standing on equal footing. Jessica admits she only let Keiichiro join because of Akino's personal recommendation, though she's still skeptical about having a trapmaster on the team. Akino just laughs it off, telling her friend that she clearly doesn't understand his true value yet. The next day, the selection test begins, and Keiichiro is immediately declared the winner of his match after being forced to reveal a glimpse of his arrow skill. Hayudu, the raid commander, is keeping a close eye on the duels. He's actually pretty shocked that a seasoned adventurer just lost to a trapper. Tsukasa is practically vibrating, begging Keiichiro for praise after his easy win. But there's no time to celebrate. Ryuzui's match is up next. The two of them head over to watch. Tsukasa is hyped because she's never actually seen Akino fight in a real duel before. The crowd's buzzing with anticipation. It's a classic showdown, a high-powered wizard versus a sturdy paladin. The referee gives the signal, and the duel between Akino and Yuusha officially begins. Tsukasa is screaming her lungs out from the sidelines, cheering for her big sister to show everyone what she's got. Yuusha draws her bow and calls out her spell, but there's no arrow on the string. It's a magic blast. A massive pillar of light erupts, shooting straight across the arena with incredible force. Tsukasa is floored by the sheer power. Even Keiichiro starts to wonder if the tactical advice he gave her was a bit overkill. But Akino isn't moving an inch. She braces behind her massive shield, determined to prove that a tank's defense is absolute. The light fades to reveal Akino standing tall. She blocked the entire blast without breaking a sweat. Yuzui realizes a single long-range attack isn't going to cut it. She's going to have to get up close and personal to break that defense. Before the fight can get too intense, the commander steps in and calls for a stop. He's seen enough to make a decision. Both of them have passed the test and are officially in the raid. Keiichiro watches them wrap up, relieved it didn't turn into a real injury. He decides to head out early while the girls celebrate. He tells Tsukasa he's leaving first, heading toward the lockers to pack up his gear. As he's walking down the hall, he hears a voice call out to him. It's Yuzui, looking a lot more relaxed than before. She catches up just to thank him, saying his advice really helped her stay calm during the duel. Keiichiro just brushes it off. He's glad she actually got to show off that hidden power of hers. She formally introduces herself as Yuzui Turu, finally feeling like she belongs in this group. She tries to offer him something as a reward, but he isn't interested in being paid for a little advice. That's when he notices her bag. It's absolutely covered in pins and badges for the legendary Holy Sword Party. Without thinking, he accidentally lets the name Yuko slip, the private nickname for Ashitari that only her childhood friends use. Yuzui stops dead in her tracks, staring at him like he's just committed a crime. She immediately gets defensive, telling him he has no right to call a superstar like Ashitari by such a familiar name. She starts quoting a fan report, explaining that only her absolute closest friends are allowed to use that nickname. She's getting more and more intense, practically shouting at him for his lack of respect. Keiichiro realizes he's dealing with a hardcore stan. This girl knows way too much about his old team. Tsukasa catches up to them and admits she really only knows the name of the party leader, Ko. Keiichiro explains that since the other members were high-tier specialists, they usually just avoided the media entirely. He thinks to himself that it was for the best. Being famous sounds like a massive headache he doesn't need. But Yuzui is still stuck on a nickname. She's lecturing him about proper etiquette for an idol fan. He tries to explain that it's just a habit because he's the one who actually came up with the nickname in the first place. Yuzui is stunned. Tsukasa comes back around just as the silence gets awkward. Yuzui just stares at him, her brain finally starting to connect the dots between this mysterious trapper and the legend. Keiichiro realizes he's probably said too much. The vibe has shifted completely. She remembers a rumor she heard, that the nickname Yuko was given to her by a childhood friend who was also a party member. It was a deep lore rumor, something that was never mentioned in any official interviews. Only a few people knew. She whispers it out loud. He must be the phantom fourth member of Holy Sword. He asks her not to call him that embarrassing title, but the cat is officially out of the bag. Her jaw drops as she realizes the most legendary support in the country was actually kicked out of his party. To a mega fan like her, this is the biggest scandal in the history of adventuring. Yuzui is practically soul-crushed by the revelation. Keiichiro can only sigh. He didn't think his past would be this much of a scandal for a random fan. Akino finally catches up to them, wondering what all the drama is about. She thinks he's hitting on a girl, but Tsukasa knows better. He's just getting exposed. Keiichiro pulls her aside, asking her to keep a lid on his identity. He really doesn't want to cause any more trouble for his old team or himself. Yuzui gets it. If the world found out a legend was playing as a low-level trapper, the media would never leave him alone. She promises to stay quiet, but then she hits him with a request of her own. She wants to see if he has any private photos of the team. He pulls out his phone to show her one. Tsukasa watches them, thinking Yuzui is surprisingly bold when it comes to her favorite idols. Yuzui is hyperventilating, her brain short-circuiting at the sight of a rare photo. This is basically the holy grail for a fan like her. Later at dinner, she's still obsessing over a picture of Ashitari as a child. Keiichiro realizes meeting his fans in person is a lot more taxing than fighting monsters. Tsukasa is shocked by the price of the hotel, but Jessica mentions her family actually owns the place. Must be nice to be rich. Akino mentions Jessica organized everything herself as part of her elite upbringing. She's basically been trained for leadership since birth. Some other hunters wander over, curious about the picture Yuzui is drooling over. They're wondering if Keiichiro has a secret girlfriend. One of them recognizes the Holy Sword logo in the corner of the screen. Keiichiro freezes. He really needs to be more careful with that phone. Tsukasa steps in to save him, dragging Yuzui away before she accidentally spills the beans to everyone in the room. The two girls start chatting and realize they're actually the same age. It's rare to see two 14-year-olds in a high-rank raid like this. Yuzui admits she usually works solo and lives pretty far away, only coming out for the big events that offer the best rewards. Tsukasa is impressed by her dedication. It sounds like Yuzui takes the job a lot more seriously than most veteran adventurers. Yuzui gets quiet and reveals the real reason she's here. She needs a legendary dungeon drop called the Blue Elixir. Akino knows exactly how rare that is. The cheapest one ever sold on the market went for a cool 1 billion yen. Keiichiro realizes she isn't looking for money. If she needs an elixir that powerful, someone close to her must be in a really bad way. Yuzui looks down, her voice trembling as she mentions her mother. It's clearly a painful subject for her. She explains that her mom can't even walk anymore, and modern medicine has already given up on her. Magic is the only hope left. She's been saving every cent she makes, but finding the drop herself is the only realistic way she'll ever get it. Keiichiro finally understands why she was so desperate to pass the selection test. She isn't just fighting for herself. She thanks him one last time before heading off to bed, leaving him with a lot to think about. She thinks about how he's always helping people, even in a fancy hotel like this. He really hasn't changed at all. The next morning, the team gathers for one last pep talk. It's time to head into the pyramid and face whatever's inside. The commander gives the signal, and the raid officially begins. The atmosphere is heavy with anticipation. The party marches toward the massive stone structure. Even the veterans look a bit tense facing a dungeon of this scale. Jessica is leading the charge, looking every bit the noble commander. She's determined to make this raid a success. They run into the first wave of monsters immediately. Keiichiro gets to work, setting up symbols to trip them up and slow them down. Everything seems to be going smoothly. The hunters are making quick work of the trash mobs, and the mood is starting to lighten. The commander tells everyone to hold the line. So far, the casualties are 0 and they're ahead of schedule. But Keiichiro is starting to notice something weird. The monsters they're fighting have absolutely nothing in common with each other. Tsukasa is just having a blast, cheering him on from the side. She's clearly having a lot more fun than he is. The main group prepares for the final stretch. They're about to reach the boss room, and the pressure is ramping up. Haidu pulls Keiichiro aside. He's noticed that the trap master is actually carrying the support load for half the team. He tells him to slow down and save some strength for the boss. He knows Keiichiro is hiding his true power. He admits he would have put him in the main group if he wasn't officially registered as a support class. He knows a ringer when he sees one. Keiichiro asks him to put the heavy tanks at the very front of the formation when they enter the boss room. He has a bad feeling. He explains that dungeons usually have a specific theme, like fire or ice monsters. But this place is a total mess. There's no pattern to the ecosystem here, which means predicting the boss's abilities is going to be impossible. He warns that if they aren't careful, this mission could go south real fast. The commander just listens, his expression hardening. Hayudu admits that Keiichiro has a valid point about the dungeon's anomalies, but he flatly refuses to change the formation. He explains that since Jessica is on site, he has to keep the elite tanks in reserve to ensure her safety above all else. Keiichiro realizes that in a corporate-sponsored raid, the employer's life is the only priority. Keiichiro is still haunted by a nagging feeling that he's missing a crucial detail. His train of thought is shattered when the scouts finally announce they've reached the boss's lair. The massive double doors creak open, revealing a gargantuan chamber supported by towering, bone-white pillars that seem to stretch into infinity. Tsukasa clings to her staff, terrified by the oppressive atmosphere of the room. This is a level of danger neither she nor her brother has ever faced alone. Without warning, a massive insectoid nightmare drops from the ceiling, its serrated pincers and multiple glowing eyes searching for its first victim. The hunters scramble into their combat formation, but Keiichiro is frozen for a split second, struck by the overwhelming aura of the beast. Dodge! Someone screams, but the warning comes far too late. The monster lunges forward with speed that should be impossible for its size. The lead tank raises his shield, but the monster's pincer slices through the heavy metal and flesh as if they weren't even there. A spray of hot blood paints the chamber floor as the vanguard is torn apart in a single, brutal stroke. The raid has turned into a massacre in seconds. Tsukasa stares in wide-eyed horror, blood spattered across her face as she realizes that the bad feeling Keiichiro had was an understatement of the century.